For decades, one question has quietly followed Africa through every major political change. Who truly decides the continent's future? Is it the governments elected by its people, the leaders who emerge during times of crisis, or the powerful interests beyond Africa's borders that have long shaped security, trade, and economic policy? Today, that question has become more urgent than ever. Across the Sahel, a new political movement is taking shape, and it is challenging assumptions that have existed for generations. What began as a security alliance between Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger is gradually becoming something much larger. The Alliance of Sahel States, known as the AES, is no longer attracting attention simply because of its joint military cooperation. Increasingly, it is drawing interest because of the political message it represents. Leaders such as Ibrahim Traoré, Assimi Goïta, and Abdourahmane Tiani have argued that African nations should have the sovereign right to choose their own partners, manage their own natural resources, and determine their own path toward development without external pressure. Whether one agrees with every aspect of their policies or not, this message has sparked discussion well beyond the borders of the three founding members. As more African nations reconsider their foreign policy priorities, an important question is beginning to emerge. Could countries such as Guinea, Chad, Mauritania, Togo, the Central African Republic, Sudan, South Sudan, or even Algeria find common ground with the ideas promoted by the AES? And if they do, could this alliance evolve into a new political voice that reshapes conversations about sovereignty across the continent? In today's video, we will examine the strategic forces behind the growing influence of the AES, the opportunities and challenges that lie ahead, the reactions from international partners, and whether this movement represents a temporary shift or the beginning of a broader transformation in Africa's political future. Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel and join us as we continue exploring the stories shaping Africa's future. The Alliance of Sahel States did not emerge simply because three neighboring countries faced the same security threats. It was created because their leaders reached a similar conclusion about the future of their region. They believed that military cooperation alone would never solve the deeper challenges confronting the Sahel. Lasting stability, in their view, would require political sovereignty, economic independence, and the ability to make national decisions without excessive external influence. This broader vision explains why the AES is increasingly being discussed as more than a regional security arrangement. Unlike many traditional military alliances, the AES has gradually expanded its objectives beyond defense. Its leaders have introduced initiatives aimed at strengthening economic cooperation, coordinating diplomatic positions, improving regional infrastructure, and building institutions that could support long-term development. The creation of common financial mechanisms, discussions about shared investment strategies, and plans for closer cooperation in transportation and energy suggest that the alliance is attempting to build a more comprehensive regional framework rather than relying solely on military coordination. Perhaps even more important than these institutional developments is the narrative that accompanies them. Across many parts of Africa, questions about sovereignty have become increasingly prominent. Governments are asking whether they should retain greater control over natural resources, negotiate more balanced partnerships with foreign powers, and develop industries that create value within their own borders instead of exporting raw materials with limited economic benefits. The AES has placed these questions at the center of its political identity, presenting sovereignty not as an abstract slogan but as a practical strategy for development. Whether this ambitious vision ultimately succeeds remains uncertain. Building new institutions is far easier than making them effective, and political declarations must eventually produce measurable improvements in security, economic growth, and public confidence. Nevertheless, the emergence of the AES has already achieved something significant. It has reopened a continent-wide debate about who should shape Africa's future and what genuine independence should mean in the 21st century. That debate, rather than military cooperation alone, may ultimately become the alliance's most lasting contribution to modern African politics. If there is one person who has become the public face of the Alliance of Sahel States, it is Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Although the AES was built collectively by Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, Traoré has emerged as the leader most closely associated with this message of sovereignty. His speeches are not focused only on Burkina Faso's future. Instead, they speak to a broader African audience that has grown increasingly interested in questions of political independence, economic self-reliance, and control over national resources. For many supporters across the continent, he represents a younger generation determined to redefine Africa's place in the global order. One of Traoré's central arguments is that sovereignty cannot exist if a nation depends entirely on others for its security, economic development, or management of strategic resources. He frequently links political independence with industrial development, local value creation, and stronger national institutions. According to this vision, exporting raw materials while importing finished products keeps African economies trapped in a cycle of dependency. Real independence, therefore, requires countries to process more of their own resources, strengthen domestic industries, and invest in their own people. This message resonates beyond Burkina Faso because many African countries face similar debates. Governments across the continent are increasingly asking how they can negotiate fairer partnerships, diversify international relationships, and ensure that natural wealth contributes more directly to national development. In this context, Traoré's ideas have attracted attention from citizens and policymakers who see sovereignty as both a political principle and an economic strategy. However, influence alone cannot guarantee success. Supporters may admire Traoré's vision, but the long-term credibility of both his leadership and the AES will ultimately depend on measurable results, improvements in security, stronger economic performance, transparent governance, and better living conditions will matter far more than speeches or international popularity. If these goals are achieved, the message of sovereignty may inspire even broader cooperation across Africa. If they are not, the appeal of the movement could gradually weaken despite its powerful political narrative. Several African countries are frequently mentioned when analysts discuss the possible future expansion of the Alliance of Sahel States, even though none has officially applied for membership. Each country brings its own strategic interests, political priorities, and security concerns, making the future of the alliance far more complex than simply adding new members. Understanding these differences helps explain why the AES continues to attract attention across the continent. Guinea is often considered one of the closest political matches. Like the founding members of the AES, it has experienced military-led political change and has faced tensions with regional organizations. Beyond politics, Guinea possesses some of the world's largest reserves of bauxite, along with significant deposits of iron ore, gold, and diamonds. These resources make economic sovereignty an important national issue, and discussions about retaining more value from natural wealth closely resemble debates taking place inside the AES. Chad presents a different but equally important case. Located at the crossroads of North, Central, and West Africa, the country has spent years confronting cross-border terrorism and armed groups. Its experienced military and strategic location naturally creates opportunities for security cooperation with neighboring Sahel states. At the same time, Chad continues to pursue a balanced foreign policy, maintaining relationships with multiple international partners while carefully protecting its own national interests. Mauritania also deserves close attention. Sharing a long border with Mali, it understands many of the security challenges affecting the Sahel. However, its leadership has traditionally emphasized diplomatic balance and constructive engagement with a wide range of partners rather than aligning too closely with any single political bloc. This cautious approach makes full membership uncertain, but practical cooperation remains entirely possible. Togo completes this group from a different perspective. Instead of contributing vast natural resources or military strength, it offers something equally valuable. The port of Lomé serves as one of the most important trade gateways for several landlocked countries, including members of the AES. As regional trade becomes increasingly important, Togo could strengthen the alliance through logistics, transportation, and economic connectivity without necessarily becoming a formal member. These different national priorities demonstrate that the future of the AES may depend as much on flexible partnerships as on official expansion. Beyond the countries already discussed, 4 other nations are often included in conversations about the future reach of the Alliance of Sahel States. Although their political circumstances differ significantly, each occupies a strategic position that could influence the long-term evolution of regional cooperation if stability and shared interest continue to grow. The Central African Republic is one such example. While it is not geographically part of the Sahel, it has strengthened security cooperation with Russia and consistently emphasized national sovereignty in its foreign policy. Its leadership has argued that every country should be free to choose its own security partners without external pressure. These positions echo many of the principles promoted by the AES, making closer cooperation on defense and diplomacy a realistic possibility even without formal membership. Sudan presents a more complicated picture. Its location connects North Africa, East Africa, and the Sahel, giving it enormous geopolitical importance. However, the country's ongoing internal conflict remains its immediate priority. Until peace and political stability are restored, participation in any new regional political framework is unlikely. Nevertheless, if Sudan eventually stabilizes, its strategic position and regional influence could make it an important partner for future Sahel initiatives. South Sudan faces similar challenges. As one of Africa's youngest nations, it continues working to strengthen state institutions while addressing economic hardship and internal divisions. Although it does not border current AES members, future cooperation in infrastructure, transportation, agriculture, and border security could create opportunities for practical engagement if regional integration expands beyond traditional security concerns. Perhaps the most interesting long-term possibility is Algeria. As one of Africa's largest economies and a country with extensive experience in regional diplomacy and counter-terrorism, Algeria has significant influence across North Africa and the Sahel. It has traditionally pursued an independent foreign policy while maintaining relationships with multiple global powers. Rather than joining the AES directly, Algeria could play the role of a strategic partner that supports dialogue, regional stability, and economic cooperation. Together, these 4 countries illustrate that the future influence of the AES may extend well beyond formal membership, developing instead through flexible partnerships built on shared interest, sovereignty, and regional development. One reason the Alliance of Sahel States continues to attract attention is that its ambitions appear to extend beyond politics and security. If the organization hopes to inspire additional partners across Africa, it must demonstrate that sovereignty can deliver practical economic benefits. Speeches may inspire public support, but long-term credibility depends on infrastructure, investment, trade, and measurable improvements in everyday life. For that reason, many observers believe the next phase of the AES will be defined less by military cooperation and more by economic integration. Several initiatives already point in that direction. The alliance has discussed creating stronger financial institutions capable of supporting regional development, financing infrastructure, and encouraging investment within member states. Shared transportation projects, improved road networks, expanded energy cooperation, and coordinated trade policies could gradually reduce barriers that have limited regional commerce for decades. If these efforts continue, they may provide tangible reasons for neighboring countries to strengthen cooperation with the alliance even without seeking immediate membership. Equally important is the possibility of creating wider Pan-African partnerships. Rather than expanding through formal accession alone, The AES could develop flexible relationships with countries interested in specific areas such as security, coordination, transportation, energy, agriculture, or industrial development. This approach would allow governments to participate according to their own national priorities while preserving their independent foreign policies. Such flexibility could prove more attractive than requiring immediate political integration. Nevertheless, these ambitions also face significant obstacles. Building modern highways, railways, energy systems, and financial institutions requires enormous investment, effective governance, and long-term political stability. The three founding members continue to confront security threats while operating under considerable economic pressure. Without transparent institutions, responsible financial management, and sustained regional cooperation, even the most ambitious development plans may struggle to achieve lasting success. Ultimately, the future appeal of the Alliance of Sahel States will depend not only on its political message, but also on its ability to improve the daily lives of ordinary citizens. If stronger cooperation produces safer communities, expanding industries, better transportation, reliable electricity, and greater economic opportunity, the idea of African sovereignty will become more persuasive through visible results rather than powerful speeches alone. That transformation could become the alliance's greatest achievement. Although the Alliance of Sahel States has attracted growing support in many parts of Africa, its rapid rise has also generated concern among several Western governments and international organizations. These concerns are not based on a single issue, but on a combination of political, security, and economic factors. Understanding these criticisms is important because they help explain why the future of the AES remains one of the most closely watched developments on the continent. One major concern centers on governance. Western governments have repeatedly questioned the prolonged military-led transitions in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, arguing that long-term stability ultimately depends on representative political institutions and constitutional government. Human rights organizations have also expressed concerns about restrictions on political activity, freedom of expression, and the protection of civilians during ongoing security operations. These issues continue to shape international perceptions of the alliance. Another source of concern involves security itself. Critics argue that despite changes in military partnerships and regional cooperation, extremist violence remains a serious challenge across large parts of the Sahel. They question whether replacing previous security arrangements with new ones will produce significantly better outcomes. Others point to the alliance's increasingly close relationships with Russia, suggesting that the region could simply exchange one form of external dependence for another rather than achieving genuine strategic autonomy. However, supporters of the AES present a different perspective. They argue that many years of international military assistance failed to eliminate terrorism or deliver lasting stability. From their point of view, African governments have the sovereign right to reassess existing partnerships and pursue new strategies if previous approaches did not meet national expectations. They also emphasize that sovereignty does not require rejecting cooperation with the West. Instead, it means having the freedom to choose partners according to national interests rather than external pressure. Ultimately, the debate surrounding the Alliance of Sahel States extends beyond the Sahel itself. It reflects a broader discussion about how African nations can balance security, democracy, economic development, and national sovereignty in an increasingly competitive international environment. Whether one supports or questions the direction of the AES, its emergence has forced governments across Africa and beyond to reconsider long-standing assumptions about regional cooperation and political independence. The future of the Alliance of Sahel States will ultimately be determined not by headlines, speeches, or diplomatic symbolism, but by results that ordinary people can experience in their daily lives. Every political movement reaches a moment when its promises must be measured against reality, and the AES is now approaching that important stage. If the alliance hopes to become a lasting political force across Africa, it must demonstrate that sovereignty can produce meaningful improvements in security, prosperity, and governance. The first measure of success will always be security. Citizens must feel safer traveling between communities. Farmers must be able to cultivate their land without fear. Businesses must operate with greater confidence. And children must return to schools protected from violence. Without measurable progress in public safety, even the strongest political message will gradually lose credibility among the people it seeks to inspire. Economic performance will be equally important. The alliance must show that stronger regional cooperation can encourage investment, create employment opportunities, expand local industries, improve transportation, and generate more value from Africa's own natural resources. Success will depend not only on controlling resources, but also on transforming them into factories, infrastructure, technology, and sustainable economic growth that benefits local communities rather than a limited number of institutions or individuals. Transparent governance represents another essential test. Public confidence grows when governments manage national resources responsibly, strengthen public institutions, reduce corruption, and create predictable policies that encourage long-term development. Lasting sovereignty requires accountable leadership as much as political independence. Without effective institutions, even the most ambitious regional vision will struggle to achieve durable success. For these reasons, the true significance of the Alliance of Sahel States extends beyond its current membership. It has encouraged a broader conversation across Africa about how nations can pursue greater independence while remaining open to international cooperation. Whether the AES eventually expands or remains limited to its founding members, its greatest contribution may be inspiring African countries to rethink the relationship between sovereignty, development, accountability, and regional partnership. The next chapter will depend not on powerful rhetoric, but on practical achievements that improve the lives of millions across the continent. The experience of the Alliance of Sahel States offers lessons that extend far beyond Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Regardless of whether the alliance eventually grows or remains limited to its current members, it has encouraged governments across Africa to reconsider how sovereignty, development, and international cooperation should work together in the 21st century. The most valuable lesson is not that every country should copy the AES, but that every nation should carefully evaluate how to strengthen its own independence while remaining connected to the wider world. The first lesson is that political sovereignty must be supported by economic capability. True independence cannot rely solely on national flags, political speeches, or diplomatic declarations. Countries also need productive industries, reliable energy, modern infrastructure, skilled workers, and the ability to transform natural resources into higher value products. Without these foundations, political independence may remain largely symbolic. The second lesson is that replacing one external dependency with another does not create genuine autonomy. African countries can benefit from partnerships with Europe, Asia, the Middle East, or the Americas, provided those relationships are based on mutual respect, transparency, and shared interests. A balanced foreign policy gives governments greater flexibility while protecting their long-term national priorities. The third lesson concerns institutions. Charismatic leaders can inspire change, but durable progress depends on effective public administration, accountable governance, independent legal systems, and responsible financial management. Strong institutions ensure that national development continues even after individual leaders leave office, creating stability that extends beyond political transitions. Finally, regional cooperation remains essential. No country can solve terrorism, climate challenges, migration, infrastructure gaps, or economic development alone. Strong partnerships between neighboring states create larger markets, improve transportation, strengthen security coordination, and encourage investment that benefits entire regions rather than isolated economies. Whether through the Alliance of Sahel States, the African Union, or other regional organizations, cooperation will remain a central element of Africa's future. Ultimately, the continent's long-term success will depend on its ability to combine sovereignty with responsibility, independence with cooperation, and national ambition with shared regional progress. As our journey comes to an end, one conclusion stands above all others. The Alliance of Sahel States is no longer viewed simply as a regional security partnership between Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Whether it ultimately expands or not, the alliance has already changed an important conversation across Africa. It has encouraged governments, scholars, and ordinary citizens to ask whether sovereignty should mean more than political independence. Can it also mean controlling natural resources, choosing international partners freely, strengthening domestic industries, and creating opportunities that benefit future generations? The answer to that question has not yet been written. The future of the AES will depend less on political speeches than on practical achievements. Citizens will judge its success by safer communities, stronger economies, reliable infrastructure, transparent institutions, and opportunities that improve everyday life. If those goals are achieved, the alliance may inspire broader cooperation across the continent. If they are not, its influence could gradually diminish despite its powerful message of sovereignty. Regardless of what happens next, the debate started by Ibrahim Traoré, Assimi Goïta, and Abdurrahmane Chiani has already reached far beyond the borders of the Sahel. Governments throughout West Africa are carefully observing how Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger attempt to balance national independence with regional cooperation while responding to complex international pressures, including their relationships with France and other global partners. At the same time, organizations such as the African Union continue to play an essential role in shaping the continent's broader future. Perhaps that is the most important lesson from today's discussion. Africa's future will not be determined by one alliance, one leader, or one foreign partner. It will be shaped by the ability of African nations to cooperate while protecting their own interests, strengthen institutions, and transform sovereignty into lasting prosperity for their people. Thank you for joining us on Africa News. We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe the Alliance of Sahel States could become a new political voice for Africa, or will it remain a regional partnership? If you enjoyed this analysis, please subscribe to the channel so you never miss our next in-depth report. We sincerely appreciate your time and support. Every video on this channel is carefully researched, thoughtfully written, and meticulously edited by our dedicated team. We don't rely on automated production or shortcuts to create our content. Every story, every visual, and every detail is crafted with genuine care, passion, and a commitment to bringing you meaningful, high-quality videos.